My mother-in-law kicked me out of her house after disapproving of my decision to give birth at my parents' home. She physically forced me out, still in my pajamas, not even giving me a chance to put on shoes. With nothing but my phone, I quickly called my mom, who was nearby. I waited for her at a local diner, still reeling from the sudden eviction. When my mom and sister heard what happened, they were livid. They immediately took action, which would soon cause major trouble for both my mother-in-law and my husband. My name is Emma, and I'm 29 years old. I married Jerry, who is 31. A year ago, his father runs a large company, and Jerry is being groomed to take over as CEO, gaining experience at one of their smaller branches. I met Jerry at work, unaware of his family's business empire until just before our wedding. When he explained that he was set to inherit the company, it was a shock, but his confidence and popularity made it all click. I went from being an ordinary employee to the wife of a future CEO almost overnight. After our wedding, Jerry moved to the main office. While I kept working at my job, my father-in-law seemed supportive, even telling me, "I've heard you're a young leader at your workplace, keep it up." But my mother-in-law saw things differently. "Why would a wife neglect her home to work?" she asked, strongly opposing my decision to keep my job. At first, I thought living separately from Jerry's parents would avoid any tension. But I was wrong. They insisted that we live together, and that's when our problems started. When Jerry's father suggested it would help if someone were around to manage things at the house, Jerry, who had always lived there, agreed. "I'm worried about Mom, and moving now just wouldn't work for me," he said, and I felt like I had no choice but to agree. When my mother-in-law heard about the arrangement, she asked pointedly, "Since everyone agrees, Emma, do you have any objections?" Feeling cornered, I reluctantly consented. Living under the same roof with my in-laws quickly became a challenge. My mother-in-law, already critical of my job, made my life miserable, insisting I quit and take over all the household chores, even though I worked full-time. If she found the slightest flaw in my cleaning, even something as small as a speck of dust, she demanded I redo it. At first, I tried to take her criticisms in stride, cleaning more thoroughly. But her expectations escalated to inspecting rarely clean spots, like behind the TV or between dressers, things that went far beyond normal cleaning tasks. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. "I can't clean every spot every day. I work just like Jerry. I'll do a deep clean on the weekends, so there's no need to redo things today," I told her. My response enraged her. "How dare you speak to me like that?" she shouted, calling Jerry in a fury, accusing me of yelling and twisting my words to make it sound like I had been confrontational, even tearing up for effect. I hoped Jerry would stand up for me. Surely, he'd understand. "Mom, Emma is working too. Maybe you could be more understanding," I thought he might say. Instead, he sided with her. "Why did you upset Mom like that? She was only trying to help," he said, completely missing the point. I realized then that the only person I could rely on was my father-in-law. But his frequent absences meant I was left to deal with the tension on my own. I learned quickly that any confrontation with my mother-in-law led to trouble. She'd complain to Jerry, and he would offer no support. To keep the peace, I adopted a quieter, more submissive approach, which seemed the only way to avoid constant conflict. This strategy lasted until I started feeling unwell, prompting a doctor's visit. The diagnosis wasn't just an illness, I was pregnant. Nervous but hopeful about how the family would react, I shared the news with Jerry first. "You know how I've been feeling sick? Well, I went to the doctor, and I'm pregnant," I told him. "That's amazing, I'm going to be a dad," he exclaimed, excitement lighting up his face. "Do we know the gender yet?" "Not yet. Does it matter to you?" I asked, sensing his unspoken expectations. "Of course it does. It has to be a boy," he said, as an only child. I knew he felt strongly about continuing the family name with a son. "What if it's a girl?" I asked, wondering how this would affect his perspective. "Don't worry, it'll be a boy," he assured me, but I remained uneasy. We decided to wait to share the news with his parents until we found out the baby's gender. When we learned it was a girl, I was thrilled. I had no interest in perpetuating any gender biases. Jerry, however, wasn't as thrilled. "A girl? Are you sure? Get it checked again," he said, his disappointment palpable. His reaction left me anxious about how his mother would respond. I dreaded the conversation with my mother-in-law, knowing it would be a turning point. Eventually, Jerry and I agreed that it was time to tell his parents about the pregnancy. Emma's pregnant, Jerry announced at dinner, his tone casual, as though he were sharing the weather forecast. My father-in-law's reaction was immediate and joyful. That's wonderful, Emma, we're finally going to have a grandchild. He beamed, his excitement filling the room. My mother-in-law, however, wasn't as gracious. What's the gender? She asked sharply, her words cutting through the warm atmosphere. I hesitated briefly before answering. It's a girl, I said, my voice steady but cautious. A girl, not a boy, she muttered, her disappointment unmistakable. It has to be a boy to make sense for Jerry. My father-in-law frowned, clearly displeased with her response. Honey, why would you say that? A grandchild is a blessing, no matter the gender. Can't you just be happy for them? He said, his tone firm but measured. Her lips tightened, and she nodded reluctantly, though her disapproval was clear. I appreciated my father-in-law's support, but I knew this wouldn't be the end of the matter. Sure enough, the next morning, after my father-in-law left for work, she confronted me. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can shirk your responsibilities. You're not thinking of quitting your job, are you? If not, you'd better keep up with the housework. Pregnancy isn't an excuse for laziness. Her words stung, coming from another woman, someone who had been through pregnancy herself. They felt particularly cruel. It was in that moment I realized I couldn't stay in this environment. My child deserved better. My family's home was a few hours away by train, where my mom and sister lived together. I decided to reach out to my mom, hoping for guidance and support. Mom, it's me, Emma, I began. Emma, what a surprise. How are you? She replied warmly. I'm pregnant, I said, a mix of relief and nerves in my voice. I was thinking, could I come home to give birth? My mom's tone instantly softened. Oh, sweetheart, congratulations. Of course, you can come home, but have you spoken to Jerry and his family about this? Not yet, I admitted. Make sure you discuss it with them first. It's important to leave on good terms, she advised. Encouraged by her support, I spoke to Jerry later that day. I've been thinking. I'd like to go home to have the baby. I think it'll be easier for everyone. He barely looked up from his phone. That's fine, Mom's here, so she can help around the house, he said, his nonchalance surprising me. Hoping to smooth things over further, I approached my father-in-law. I think it might be best if I went home for the delivery. Would that be okay? He looked at me thoughtfully before nodding. If that's what you want, Emma, I won't stand in your way. Could you let your wife know? I asked hesitantly. Of course, he assured me. His support gave me the confidence I needed to proceed. The next morning, as I prepared to leave, I discovered my packed luggage was missing. Both Jerry and my father-in-law had already left for work, leaving me no choice but to confront my mother-in-law. Do you know where my luggage is? I asked cautiously. She glared at me. I got rid of it. I don't need a daughter-in-law who causes trouble. Don't ever come back, she snapped. Before I could respond, she shoved me toward the door. Get out, she screamed, slamming it shut behind me. Barefoot, still in my pajamas, I found myself locked out with only my phone in hand. The summer heat scorched the pavement beneath my feet as I made my way to a nearby diner, seeking refuge. I called my mom, my voice trembling as I recounted what had happened. Outraged, she promised to be there within the hour. When she arrived, her arms were open, and her expression was fierce. Without a word, she ushered me into the car and drove me back home. My sister was already waiting, her face a mix of anger and concern as I shared the full story. The warmth and safety of my family home felt like a haven after the chaos I had endured. The next morning, as I went outside to collect the newspaper, I realized something. I was finally where I belonged. The next morning, as I opened the door to fetch the newspaper, I was startled by the sight before me. My mother-in-law and husband were kneeling outside, their expressions a mixture of desperation and regret. Emma, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault, my mother-in-law began, her voice trembling. Please, don't cut ties with my husband's company. Jerry chimed in, his tone equally remorseful. Emma, I'm sorry too. Can we please continue doing business with my dad's company? I froze, confused. What business? What were they talking about? Before I could respond, my mom and sister appeared behind me, drawn by the commotion. What's all this racket so early in the morning? My mom asked sharply, her tone slicing through the tension. And what does resuming business mean? To avoid making a scene on the front lawn, my mom invited them inside. The air in the living room was heavy with unspoken accusations as everyone sat down. Jerry was the first to speak. Emma, your family is one of the key clients of my dad's company. Without your mom's business, their subsidiary is in serious trouble. We're asking you to reconsider. I turned to my mom, puzzled. Is that true? She nodded. Yes, we've had a long-standing business relationship with one of their subsidiaries. It's a significant partnership for their company. And their top client is your mom's company, Jerry added quickly, his eyes pleading with me. I was stunned. This was news to me, and judging by Jerry's reaction, it was news to him too. I chuckled bitterly. Well, isn't that ironic? I didn't even know. I vaguely recalled my father-in-law once mentioning that their families had been indebted to each other, but I'd never thought it ran this deep. The memory felt hollow now, given the way I had been treated. But my mom's voice brought me back to the present. I'm sorry, but I can't continue doing business with a family that treated my daughter so cruelly. I've already decided to terminate our partnership, she said firmly. My mother-in-law's face paled. Please, I beg you, I'll do anything to fix this. Just don't cut off our business ties, she pleaded, her voice breaking. My sister leaned forward, her expression unreadable until a sly smile formed. Anything, you say? Then let's start with this. You'll agree to Emma's divorce. And naturally, you'll cover alimony and child support, right? Her words landed like a thunderclap. The room went silent as everyone processed what she'd said. I didn't flinch. Jerry's indifference the previous day, it's what you deserve, isn't it, had erased any lingering affection I felt for him. My sister's proposal only echoed what I had already decided. Reluctantly, my mother-in-law looked up. If that's what it takes, even if it means agreeing to a divorce, will you resume business with my husband's company? My mom didn't miss a beat. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. It seems this lady here agrees to my daughter's divorce, she said into the phone, her tone cold. From the speaker, my father-in-law's voice boomed. Got it, Maria, I'm divorcing you. And Jerry, you're fired. Gasps filled the room. My mother-in-law's expression crumbled, and Jerry looked utterly defeated. My mom wasn't finished. Your behavior toward Emma was unforgivable. You both deserve to face the consequences, she declared. The fallout was swift and severe. My mother-in-law lost her marriage, and Jerry lost his job and the family's support. The divorce between my in-laws was finalized in record time, thanks to my father-in-law's legal team. As for me, I moved forward with my own divorce. The settlement included compensation for the emotional damage they had caused, as well as child support for my unborn daughter. The financial blow forced Jerry and his mother to deplete their savings and take on debt. They downsized to a small apartment and scraped by on odd jobs. Their once close relationship fractured under the strain. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, surrounded by the love and support of my mom and sister. With their encouragement, I began working at my family's company, ready to embrace a new chapter in my life. Though I informed Jerry of our daughter's birth, he showed no interest in being involved. That was fine by me. His role in our lives was limited to fulfilling his financial obligations. Now, my focus is on building a bright future for my daughter and me, a life filled with love, strength, and new beginnings. With my family by my side, I know we'll thrive.